Grains are an inexpensive and filling way to feed your family. In this video, we're going to be preparing 6 different ones, so follow along. The first one we're going to be making is oatmeal. And oatmeal is great for breakfast in the wintertime because it's super warm and fills you up and has lots of fiber. So all of these different grains have a ratio of water to whatever grain that it is. So for oatmeal, you're going to have 2 parts of liquid to 1 part of oatmeal. So if you're making 2 cups of oatmeal, you would use 4 cups of water. Start out by bringing your water to a boil, and you can add a little bit of a pinch of salt to this. Even though oatmeal is traditionally eaten sweet, the pinch of salt is going to enhance even sweet flavors, so that's the reason that you will see salt in a lot of sweet recipes. Once your water comes to a boil, you're going to whisk in your dry oatmeal, and this is going to just break up any clumps that are in there. And you will probably eventually have to switch to a spoon once it gets a little bit thicker, but you're just whisking until all of the clumps are broken up, and you are also making sure that it gets loosened up from the bottom. The amounts of water to oatmeal are the same for traditional and quick cook, but the traditional is just going to take a little bit longer to cook. You'll also see steel cut oats, and those take a little bit longer to cook than the regular. You're going to stir it consistently until it reaches the thickness that you want it to be. You don't have to stir it constantly. You don't have to stir it the entire time, but you are going to want to check it every 2 to 3 minutes at least, because this is very starchy and it will stick very badly. The quick cook is going to take about 5 minutes to thicken up, and the traditional is going to take 20 to 25 minutes to thicken up. So it takes a little while. There's a lot of great recipes for oatmeal online for things like overnight oats or crock-pot oats. So there's other things that you can do with it, but there's a lot of great additions like cinnamon tastes amazing in it. Butter is also a good addition. You can add things like walnuts or pecans if you'd like to. You can add a little bit of maple syrup in to add a little bit of that flavor, and then also the classic brown sugar tastes incredible in it. Cream of wheat is awesome in the wintertime as well. It's a smoother texture, so if the chunkiness of oatmeal isn't your favorite, then cream of wheat might be a good option for you. It's even smoother than grits. So cream of wheat is a much larger ratio of water, so it's 5 parts of water to 1 part cream of wheat. So when you are making this, you're going to think this is not going to come close to getting thick. So just keep in mind it's going to work, you're just going to have to be patient. So you're going to start out the same way as the oatmeal by bringing your water to a boil. You can add a pinch of salt to it to enhance your flavor as well. Bringing the water to a boil before you add the grains means that you're just going to spend less time stirring it and worrying about it sticking. You can also use milk or half water and half milk. I like to use evaporated milk sometimes as well, but keep in mind if you do this, you're going to have to stir it constantly to prevent sticking and burning, so it might be a little more work, but it definitely tastes amazing. After that, you're going to whisk in your cream of wheat and mix it up. And this one is a little bit more likely to stick than in the oatmeal, and so you do need to stir it pretty regularly. And you're going to stir it consistently until your desired consistency is reached. The thicker that it gets, the more likely it is to stick, so as it gets closer to that finishing point, then you're going to want to stir it more, but it is going to thicken all at once, and then it is going to start popping, so be careful. It'll take about 5 to 15 minutes depending on the volume of what you're cooking, so if you're cooking a lot, it's going to take a little bit longer, but then once it all thickens up, you're going to start having it pop up, and then that is very easy to get burned with. So some good additions to that are very similar to your oatmeal, so things like cinnamon and butter are really, really good in there. I like butter a lot in there. Walnuts taste really good. You can add some pecans as well, syrup, and brown sugar. I will add raisins into the cooking as well because sometimes they'll absorb some of that water and get kind of plump and really, really good. So now we're going to go into grits, which if you're not in the South, you might not have cooked these very often, but they taste amazing and are really awesome. So it's going to start out the same way as your previous 2, but the ratio here is 4 parts water to 1 part grits. And you pretty much always want to add salt to grits. So you're going to bring your water to a boil. And then once that is boiling, you're going to whisk in your grits. And any of these grains do work a little bit better if your whisk is a little bit more thin rather than the thicker whisk, because stuff doesn't get stuck as well in there. And you're going to stir this continuously until you get them to be as thick as you want to. Keep in mind these all do thicken over time, so you might want to make them a little bit looser than you think, because the more that it sits, the thicker it's going to get. So your quick cook grits are going to take about 5 minutes. Regular are going to take about 20, but you can cook them longer to get them a little bit creamier. And then your stone ground grits are going to take about an hour, so they take a really long time. So it's a pretty large difference there. So there's a lot of things you can add to grits. Butter is a classic. Almost everybody adds butter to their grits. But also cheese is really, really good in grits. And then salt and pepper are going to be awesome additions in there. And this one is not traditional, but it's one of my favorites, and you should definitely try it. Sour cream tastes really, really good in grits. It adds a creaminess to it, and it tastes awesome. And then, finally, if you are weird, and only if you are weird, you can put sugar in your grits, but I'm going to judge you a little bit. So now we're going to go on to rice, and rice has a lot of different methods of preparation. But we're going to go with cooking white rice here. Now, a lot of people will always rinse their rice before they start. I did not grow up rinsing rice, but it's definitely something that you can do if that is something that is part of your culture. One thing that should be noted is that rinsing it is going to make it stickier, so if you want it to stick together, rinsing it is a good thing. But you are going to use 2 parts water to 1 part rice. Bring that rice, water, and some salt, and you can add a tablespoon or 2 of butter if you want to a boil in your pot. So just add some water in there. You're going to cover it and turn it to low, and then leave it for 20 to 30 minutes until all that water is absorbed. Whether it's 20 or 30 minutes is going to kind of depend on your stove. So check it at 20, and if you're seeing that there's a good bit of water, you might have to kind of pull some of the rice aside and see if there's water at the bottom. Once you get used to it, you'll see over time whether it's done. Then you're going to pull your rice off the stove, and then you just fluff it with a fork. And this is a pretty important step because that's going to help a lot with the texture of the rice, but you're going to fluff that with a fork and then just serve it however you'd like to. So brown rice is something that a lot of people struggle with cooking, and cooking it on the stovetop is pretty difficult, and so we're going to come up with a way that's a little bit easier to cook it. So we're going to cook it in the oven because it means that you don't have to watch it. It means that you don't have to babysit it. So it makes it a whole lot simpler. So grab yourself an oven-safe dish or a casserole, and you're going to use the same ratio that you did with the other rice. It's 2 parts of water and 1 part of rice, and you just take boiling water and pour it on top of the rice. And you may want to do this on your oven shelf so you don't have to carry something that has boiling water in it across your kitchen, so that's something that might be helpful. And then you're just going to season it as desired and stir it, cover it, and bake it for 1 hour. You can add things like bouillon, salt, pepper. I'll add some powdered lemon flavoring that you can get, Mrs. Dash, like all sorts of stuff to make it taste really good. You could also use stock in this case as well. Any sort of liquid is going to work for it. You can also use an Instapot, and that ratio is going to be 4 cups of rice to 5 cups of water, and that will work pretty well. The next thing we're going to make is quinoa, and quinoa sounds like a weird thing, but it's really good. It's kind of got a nutty flavor to it. So the first step you definitely do not want to skip, and that is that you're going to want to rinse the quinoa. Quinoa has like this weird coating on it that can make it taste a little odd and all kind of soapy flavored. So you're going to rinse it off in a strainer. You don't want to use a colander for this step because the quinoa is just going to slip right through it. So rinse it off just to get all that outside coating off of it. And you are going to want to measure it before you strain it or before you rinse it. Then you're going to add your rinsed quinoa to a saucepan or a pot, depending on how much you're going to be making. And then you're going to add your water in. So this is going to be the same amount as rice. So it is 2 parts of water for each 1 part of dry quinoa that you rinse. So like I said, you're going to measure your quinoa before you rinse it, and that's something that you want to be really careful to remember to do. So then you're going to bring this to a boil, just like you did with the rice. And this is going to take a little bit. You can add a little bit of salt at this step as well. And once again, you can use stock or water for this step as well. And then after you brought it to a boil, you're going to cover it with the lid and then turn it down to low and let it simmer for 20 minutes until it has absorbed all of that water. So after it has absorbed all of the water, you want to fluff that up with a fork, and then you are going to serve it. So quinoa is kind of a different type of grain. It's not, it's a little bit like rice, but it is a source of complete protein, so it doesn't need anything else to make it a great source of protein for any sort of plant-based diets. You can add it in as an addition to something like a green salad. You can also just add in things to kind of make it a pasta salad. So you got a lot of things you can add to it, things like olive oil or spices, lemon juice, spices, seasonings, anything to make it add some flavor into it. And then you can add any sort of vegetables into it or things like that to change up the flavor. We've got some other videos on our channel that I'll link on here that you can check out in order to find some different recipes, but there's a ton out there in terms of how to make quinoa, so it's amazing. The next one is couscous, and couscous is kind of fun. It's one of the easiest things in the world to cook, and I'm not exaggerating by that. So couscous is prepared with 1 1/4 parts of water and 1 part couscous, which is a little bit strange. And I am talking about the couscous that's like little tiny pieces, not the Israeli couscous that's like a little bit bigger. But if you are using dried fruit in your couscous, I usually add this in with the dry couscous before I add the water, because that means it's going to absorb a little bit of water and it'll plump up a little bit, and it makes it a little bit better. Raisins or craisins taste really, really good with this, especially if you add in some other salty elements, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But it just kind of, it's traditional in a lot of recipes to have something a little bit sweet and salty in there. So once you have added in your dried fruit and you've got your couscous in there, you're going to add boiling water or stock. You can use chicken stock or vegetable stock, and then you cover it quickly with foil, and then you just let it sit for 5 minutes. And that's all it is. It doesn't take very much. While that's sitting, I usually make like a little vinaigrette. This doesn't have to be anything fancy. I add some olive oil, some lemon juice, some spices, a little bit of honey. Sometimes I add a little bit of mustard as well, just to add a little bit of extra flavor in there, and mix that up. You want it to be, it's something pretty basic, but you don't have to make it super fancy. I also like to chop up a few green olives to add in there, and that adds a little bit of saltiness in with the sweet. That's a really good contrast. So once your 5 minutes is up, you're going to fluff this with a fork. I'm sure we're seeing a pattern here. And then you are going to add in all of your other stuff. So you can add in your olives, you can add in your vinaigrette and toss it up. You will need a good amount of vinaigrette for that amount of couscous, so sometimes you might need to add a little bit extra in there. If you don't want to make your own dressing, you can use store-bought dressing. But if you are in a super big hurry, it's a great thing to bring with you. So thank you so much for watching Mixing with Merks. Thank you for joining us, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribing really, really helps out our channel.